nurturing authentic Messianic identity amidst a secular society. Torah in action, equipping youth to confront challenges and stand in their place. Good stuff. I think that instead of continuing on with the question of Babylon, the mystery of Babylon the Great, I'd like to simply summarize what we discussed previously, and then go on to these other subjects. Because really we could spend the whole day tracing the theme of Babylon from the beginning in Scripture to understand in depth why Yochanan chooses this theme. We looked at one passage, but there's a lot more to be said. So it starts with King, where he is to roam as a result of his murdering of his brother. He's supposed to roam. Instead of roaming around aimlessly and endlessly, he builds a city. Out of his rebellion against God, he builds urbanization. And that theme of the city, the theme of the urban society develops from there, climaxing then with Babylon, the story of Babylon, Genesis chapter 11. That then will eventually be contrasted between Babylon and Jerusalem. All right. So now that human society, now that human society is developing urbanization, then you want some of this, dude. Remind me of that. Then now we have the comparing and contrasting of two urban visions. An urban vision that is in rebellion against God versus an urban vision of a society that's ruled by God. And that comparison and contrast continues until we find that humanity is in search of justice. Humanity is in search of good governance. Governance that is not exploiting, governance that is not corrupt, governance that is going to be the service of the people and in service of the realm. And it fulfills God's original instruction to humanity, not only be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, but to rule creation in the character of God. You're in the image and likeness of God, so live in the image and likeness of God as you rule creation, maintaining their prosperity too. We're not the only that were blessed by God. All the creatures of His creation also were blessed to be fruitful and multiply. So good governance has to maintain the blessing of God in all of creation, so that it only improves exponentially. That's the challenge. And that eventually is going to be found in God's kingdom of heaven on earth, centered from Jerusalem, with the Torah going forth over all the earth. Meaning, the teaching, instruction of God as to how to live a godly, moral life goes forth. And then when society, or individuals in society, corrupt that moral obligation, where do you turn to? Where can somebody who has suffered injustice go to find justice? Well, the vision of hope that is given is that you will be able to find justice from God, no matter who you are, whether in the Philippines or in Egypt or in the United States, doesn't matter. We all share the common problem, same problem, and therefore we also share the same hope. Good governance and justice, and therefore turning to the King of Kings who provides righteous justice. And He rules from Jerusalem. So when the nations then under His rule, after Babylon the Great falls, and after Armageddon, after the great battle of the ages, resulting with God ruling over all the nations, with righteousness and justice, a kind of justice that truly liberates people and maintains true peace, then the nations come to worship. Egypt comes to worship in Jerusalem. It doesn't stay in Jerusalem. After the Feast of Sukkot, Tabernacles, they go back home. They go back to Egypt. And if they don't come to worship God, they have problems. There's consequences. And so the vision of the age is that the nations are still the nations. The nations have their ethnic and cultural identities. And they have likely their own local governance. And that local governance is likely what Yeshua says to his followers: you will rule with me in the kingdom. Right? Yeshua, but I might be doing this wrongly, it's different now than it was before. Is there something wrong about this?
Hello,
Because it's yours. But is it my computer or?
No.
The feedback, I don't know how to fix it. Okay, thank you. So, there you go, that's better. So Yeshua, he gives this vision to his followers. In the kingdom, you're going to rule with me. But don't think heaven somewhere gone. Think on earth. The kingdom of heaven on earth. Therefore, the question is what does that look like? For the believers in this age, to have that hope that it's very distracting for me. I don't know. Do we need this? Because maybe you can hear me without it.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, it's not really not necessary, is it? Yeah. Thank you. That's how I sound like with karaoke. So let's go for karaoke tonight. So, if it is true that believers in this age are going to rule with Messiah in the age to come, then essentially what that means is that where we live in our countries, we are going to have that responsibility of governance. And maybe the memory of what did we complain about in this age? Do we identify corruptions in our lands in this age? And what makes me so sure that if I was in their position of power and authority, that I would be any better? Would I be any less corrupt than those I am angry with, who I voted for, and now holds power over me? Using power of force. Essentially, what is government is the legitimate use of force to take my money from me in the form of taxes. Right? I don't have a choice. If I want to live in here, I have to pay my taxes. And if I don't pay my taxes, then government has the right to use force to take my taxes. But why should they need taxes? Well, so that they can live in nice mansions and have nice vacations and so forth. Right? All right? Is that why we pay taxes?
Probably.
Well, that's why I want to be in government, so that I can enjoy a good life. It's easy to criticize corruption, but if I'm honest with myself, what would I do if I have the wealth? What would I do if I had the power? I'm pretty sure I would really enjoy it. That is our responsibility now, particularly as young people becoming adult responsible people. How can I not be Babylon the Great? How can I rule with Messiah in this kingdom to come? This time is a time to study, to prepare, to train, so that when the opportunity and the time comes, I will be ready to be responsible and indeed reign with Messiah. That is a very high goal. That's a very high challenge. So the themes of Babylon is not different than the other themes that you have put in here. They are very much related one to the other. So just in case I was not clear, because I was kind of all over the place with many different concepts in the morning, right? So just to be very, very clear. the idea that is presented in Revelation of Babylon the Great to talk about Rome is talking about the problem of human nature. When we organize, what does it look like when we organize ourselves? How do we establish power and authority for our society? We will need to organize ourselves one way or another, and we do. Every culture organizes itself. And eventually, a power hierarchy is established. And that's good, it's necessary. The question is what is going to be at the top of the hierarchy, the pyramid of our society? How do you establish that structure? And how do you maintain that structure to be good, that structure to be long-lasting and good? The problem of the world is that we have an understanding. We have a clear understanding that the responsibility of good governance is going to be for the sake of prosperity, hope for a long-lasting society and civilization. The problem comes in with the disagreement as to how to do that, how to accomplish that. Because human nature is self-deceiving. Human nature, unguided and unprotected, is self-corrupting. Thus, the famous statement, the famous observation that, well, if you are put into a position, if I am given the opportunity to have power over other people's lives, that power will corrupt me. And I think I want to do that. I want to be in the position of authority, so to do good things. And if I don't know that when I have you elect me and I become representative and I am in government, and if I think that power will not corrupt me, I am the first to become corrupted. Power corrupts. Thus, ultimate power, what? How thoroughly does ultimate power corrupt? So, this is the problem of the kingdoms of the world that the Bible is addressing. It's addressing what is God's definition of what is good? What is God's definition of what is righteous? What's God's definition of what is justice? A justice that will liberate people and bring about true peace. That's the vision of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven on earth. How does God, in His Son, in Messiah, accomplish and bring that about? And that's essentially what we're just to summarize what was being discussed in the first this morning. How does Yeshua bring that about? He demonstrates that in His choosing to submit Himself to death, He demonstrates how He taught the disciples to function, to live, do as I do. And the ultimate aspect of love and service is to put your life down for another. That if we look for how to apply that on the smallest level, and we grow from there, we develop the character of responsibility. Within my family, if I'm focusing on myself, there's going to be a certain character and lifestyle. If all I'm doing throughout the day is focusing on myself. And that usually actually results with unhappiness. The more I look at myself, the more unhappy I will be. So say psychological professionals. Yeah, that's the professional observation in psychology. The more I'm focused, looking in the mirror and having my issues, my problems, what I want, what I don't want, the more unhappy I will be. And therefore, what's the simple solution? The simple solution is stop looking at myself. Stop being so egocentric. Look at rather, well, I'm suffering. Well, wait, yeah, so are you. You're also suffering. how can I help alleviate your suffering a little bit so that you feel a little less horrible? And that alleviation of grief and suffering results with a little bit of joy, doesn't it? You feel a little better, and we feel a little better doing that. And that is the simplest application of Yeshua's teaching. What it is to live in faith is a life of love. And what is a life of love is a life of service. And taking responsibility of other people's hardship. Not telling them how to live, but serving the needs of others. Looking for that on a daily basis, even if it's one little thing. And let that escalate upwards. Let that rise upwards. If a whole family is serving each other like this, and then if a community is made up of families who are living like this, and that becomes the light in the society, that the society lives. So that's the application of Yeshua's instruction. Wait a minute.
It's different.
Right? Why is it different than mine?
It has
Why is that
bubbles.
better than mine?
Yours don't have
I feel
bubbles.
like, what's it? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I'm enjoying this. Yeah, I'm just teasing.
It's a black coffee.
What?
It's a black coffee.
It's black coffee.
One more, sir.
Yeah.
You want with cream?
Thank you.
One more black coffee.
Oh, I get two black coffees. Well, I'll finish this one first. Thank you. So
Yun yun yun.
that is
Black lang. Black lang.
Black lang siya.
Black lang, sir.
we actually learned that principle very demonstrated with the British Empire.
Black lang.
The British Empire is a kingdom, right?
Didikit na yung talo.
And
Tulugan dito.
they, as a Christian kingdom,
You're Muslim now.
we gotta pray for that. We don't want that to. It's gonna be a problem because it's going that way. Yeah. They separated powers of the throne from the government. It's a very, very interesting development that they figured out and they carried out. Where you elect government, but the government is still under the monarchy. So that when we elect the prime minister, who does the prime minister answer to?
The king.
It used to be the
The throne.
The king of
Yeah.
Game of
Right? So that when it's a queen, when it's a king, yeah, it's this or that, but it's not the person. It's the throne. The prime minister every week has to go and give a report, and he has no power over policy, as far as I know or as far as I understand. But you are still subject to the throne, because the throne is the pinnacle, represents the pinnacle of our civilization, our people, our culture. Meaning our values, what's important to us. What we agree defines us. That is represented in the throne. And whoever sits on the throne and under the weight of the crown, what's their responsibility as a human being? Man or woman, queen or king, they have to live under the weight of those principles, to embody those values that represent our values. So that when I look at the king, when I look at the queen, I'm looking at the highest version of us. And therefore, the highest goal of me that I aspire to. Do I live out all of our values? Do I live out all of our morals? What's important to us? Sometimes yes, maybe often not. But I have a vision. I have a sight. That is what I aspire to. That's my vision. So that whenever I mess up, I know I'm messing up because it's not that. If I don't have a vision, then I don't know when I'm messing up. If God doesn't define what is sin and what is righteous, then I don't know. That's part of the grace of God to tell us these commandments so that we also know what, when we break those commandments, that's sin. That is missing the mark. That's missing the goal. And that's the goal. The throne is the goal. And what makes up the throne of God? What is in the Bible? What is the throne of God? It's a tricky question when we are far away from the ancient culture. Because what we observe in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, Exodus chapter 25, we find that God is teaching Moses, you had a vision up in the mountain, you had a vision in the heavens. Now I want you to bring that vision on earth. I want you to build on earth the Mishkan, the dwelling place of God, exactly as the pattern on the mountain. What? And then the first thing you build is the mercy seat. Okay? What's translated as the mercy seat, right? Is the Ark of the Covenant. It's a box. And inside the box, what do you put in there? What?
The Torah.
The Torah, the testimony,
The manna.
the manna,
The rods.
Aaron's rod, the what?
Rods.
Rats?
Aaron's
Rod,
rod.
sorry.
Rats.
I was like, that should be interesting. Yeah, sorry, the rod. Those are the things that are important to us as a people, that are a memory to us. But let's just focus on the most important, and that's the two tablets of the covenant. That which defines my behavior in relationship to God, and what in God's responsibility also. It's the definition of the marriage covenant between God and Israel on those two tablets. And they're two, not because it's too much for one, but there's two topics, one for God and one for Israel. So those 10 words, those are the summary of, those are the minimal description of regulation that a kingdom needs. Actually, it's enough. If all we have are those 10, then actually we don't need police force, we don't need an army, we don't need, because there's nobody loitering, there's nobody stealing, there's nobody corrupting justice, there's nobody corrupting speech. And we celebrate freedom. We celebrate liberty. Because what is the first of those 10? The first of the 10 words, 10 commandments, how does it begin?
I am the Lord.
KO.
Guys, I think we choose too much. Because you might remember the Christian version begins with, do not have any other gods before me. Right? So nice to hear yours. It starts with the declaration of God is King. And what has He done for us? He's liberated us. Who is God and what has He done? He's liberated us, and that He purchased us, and therefore He has the right to tell us how to live. And how do we live is what follows. But that opening statement gives us an opening, fundamental statement of our values. And that is, what's important to the kingdom of God is liberty. I have redeemed you. I have taken you out of the house of slavery. You're now free people. That is what matters in this kingdom also. But how do you maintain freedom? How do you maintain that liberty? Well, if I'm free without God, as in modern Western societies that is spreading throughout the world, is secular liberal value. Meaning to be free without God, free without moral, ethical restraint. It means I can do whatever I want. And what do I want is my biology. What I want is sex. What I want is food. And all the yummy food that I want. And all the yummy
Donuts.
Man, all the donuts.
And all the donuts.
Except for donuts. It doesn't apply to donuts. But as a man, I want all the yummy donut ladies. Okay, as many as I like. And it doesn't matter if she's married to another man. Why should that matter? I see her, I like her, I want to take her. It doesn't matter that she is the wife of somebody else. Alright, so I'm free. I'm free to do whatever I want, and nobody has the right to tell me what not to do because I'm free. That's morality without God. Morality with God says you're free, and because you're free, you can now control yourself. Because what is true freedom is the ability to see a box of donuts and eat only half.
This passage, they do what is good in their eyes.
Exactly. What is good in my eyes is what I do. So I define what's good.
I am God.
I am God, and I do whatever the hell I want. And we now philosophically understand that's not freedom. That's false freedom. And that's what is spreading throughout the world now. And that's what we want to understand when we're talking about Babylon the Great. Mystery Babylon is Rome. It's still with us today, and I'm a member of it if I behave in this way. I don't have control over my desires, my drives, what I want. I'll do what's good in my eyes. Therefore, I am enjoying the prostitute of Rome that's over many waters. So therefore, I won't be functioning in the values of the kingdom. The values of the kingdom are the values written in the 10 words. And that is liberty guided by restraint. Guided by what is the action that is good for others. I'm just following you, right? Whatever you do, I do. That is how Yeshua was demonstrated. He's the king. He's the vision of the goal of. And he sits on the throne that has been from the beginning given to us. Now, let's focus on that throne a little bit more before we move on a little. So, when you're looking at the Ark of the Covenant, that part which is translated as the mercy seat, what does it look like? What is the lid, the covering of the Ark, what does it look like?
There's two cherubim.
Two cherubim.
Right, just like this. Right? And all of you know the cherubim because you read Genesis. Yeah. It's
It's the down.
So, you all read the garden story from Genesis, and you all read how we were sent away from our responsibility. When God says to humanity, not only are you made in my image and likeness, not only are you created to rule, not to be slaves, but to rule. Because remember, in the old ancient Near East, humanity was created by the gods to be the slaves of the gods. Now, God has a different story to tell humanity. You weren't created to be my slave. You were created for a different purpose. You're to rule. Rule creation. But how are you going to rule creation? Well, the next chapter is the introduction of the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Delight. And what we're told there is to serve and guard the garden. So as a ruler, I am to serve what I rule. I am to guard and protect what I rule, what I am responsible for. That's humanity's call from God. And therefore, to be very simple, what guidance do we take? Especially if in my youth I can understand, if I'm young I can understand that what is going to give me meaning in life is these principles. What is the most important? Serve that. What is going to be most important? Guard that. And what existence were we created for? A beautiful garden of delight where God walks with us in harmony with all the rest of creation that He has created. And we serve that existence and we guard that existence. That is the garden of, in the midst of which is the coconut. because you told me it's the tree of life. Alright? The tree of life in the midst of the garden. That's what you told me, right? Yeah. So, when we fail to guard the garden, and we are sent away, how does the story conclude? Who does God put in our place?
Angel.
Not angels. What are they called? It's here that the scripture introduces for the first time the cherubim.
The cherubim.
Now they may be angels, but they're not called angels here. They're called cherubim. So I'm just being
Technical.
I'm just being annoying. Okay? That's where cherubim or cherubim are introduced. The cherubim are introduced as guarding the way to the tree of life. They're doing what is our responsibility to do. And then we have all the stories of Genesis and Exodus demonstrating the contrary. What is it like when we don't guard the garden? What is it like when we don't guard the most important values that God has created for us to serve? We destroy. We turn the earth from a garden to a wasteland. We hunt the animals to the point that they're no longer going to be walking. They're no longer, you can't find them. As I was enjoying and admiring the northern mountains, and whether it is deforestation or also they explained to me that there's no hunting anymore. There's nothing left to hunt. It's all been hunted. Just like in Israel. They've all been hunted. There's nothing left to hunt. And we still have a lot of trees. Israel had all the trees. What's once forested is now barren without trees. And that's how we came back to the land in the 1800s. Desert waste all except for the very north. And who preserved the trees in the very north was the Christian Germans who had a culture of forestation. And they moved to the land, and they understood that for every tree you cut down, you keep two. So yes, cut the trees. You have a right to, and it's important to exploit the resource. But exploit it in a way that it stays there for future generations. So you're going to cut one tree down, you have to leave two next to it. Whereas the Ottoman Turks just cut everything down. So good governance versus bad governance. Alright, so we have Genesis and Exodus to illustrate for us the contrast. It results with human slavery. So that when finally we come to the mountain of God in Mount Sinai, in the covenant of Torah, now we are introduced to God's throne, and what do we see on top of the throne? It's the second time in all of Scripture that you see the cherubim. The first time you see the cherubim are guarding the way to the tree of life. So now, therefore, when you see those cherubim, you see the guardians of the way to the tree of life in the midst of the garden. In other words, they're showing you, where do you find the Garden of Eden? Is it in the Philippines? Is it in Iran? Where is the Garden of Eden? Not here, not there. In your heart. In potential. But we don't know. We don't see it. We don't know. It's lost. It's in the heavens. And now we have to bring it from the heavens to it. We have to bring the rule and the reign of God, so that when we live the kingdom of God on earth, what is that goal, that vision that we see up there that we can bring down here? Transform the wasteland into a garden. Transform the devastation into delight. And serve that, guard that. It's a life of reclaiming responsibility. The cherubim that we see, they're doing what we were created and called to do by God. So when we see them, we see these facing one another, and then looking down onto the lid of the ark. They're in their face, they're pointing us the way to the tree of life. What is the tree of life? It's the Torah. She is a tree of life for those who take hold of her. Her ways, in Proverbs 3, are ways of pleasantness and peace. She, the wisdom of God, the word of God, the teaching of God, ways of pleasantness and peace. She's a tree of life. That is the pinnacle of the kingdom. And it's instructing us, humanity, what can we aspire to? Aspire to take responsibility. In responsibility, we find our fulfillment. We find the most meaningful life. Without a meaningful life, we are lost and unhappy. Where do we find joy is in our meaning. Where do we find meaning is in responsibility. And our responsibility in the service of others. That's the progression and that's the vision. So we know that that is the throne of God because it's not unique to us. We look at in archaeology in Iran, we look at
Last corridor.
It takes a lot of
Favorite niya. Favorite niya.
so these are for me, what's for you?
It's a kingdom of donuts.
yeah, kingdom.
Has
of
there ever
donuts.
been so many donuts in your house? The tables are full of them. When we look at the Canaanite representations of the thrones or kings, they have cherubim guarding them. Okay? So that's how archaeology helps us study the Bible. Without the archaeology, we wouldn't know that that's... When you talk about cherubim, you're talking about thrones. We wouldn't know that necessarily. We can piece it together. The Bible is teaching us, you see cherubim, you see the way to the Garden of Eden. Archaeology teaches us when you see cherubim, you see guardians of thrones. Put those two together, now we know, oh, that's God's throne. That's the center of his kingdom. What's the most important destiny goal of the kingdom of God is restoring the wasteland back to Eden. How do you do it? Live these words. They're not commandments. It's not the 10 Commandments. That's how we call them. The 10 words. Aseret hadibot. The 10 statements, the 10 words. Aseret hadibot. Because it's in words that we communicate our values. Statements that we hear in understanding. And therefore, where God speaks with us, and where he leads with us. So, before I focus a little bit more on cherubim, any questions, comments or questions about this so far?
I just want to share.
Yes.
I think a couple of years ago, I was dealing with a problem in me that is very hard to fix. So I was praying. I received this vision in my head, like an answer of how you deal with it. And it tells me to put cherubims here, over here.
Nice.
On both sides of my head.
Wow.
So that means that you guard your thoughts,
Yes.
and then you will be able to get to deal with this problem.
Wow, that's really nice. That's really amazing. It's very much aligned with. Let me add one thing that I learned from this I mentioned him before. Dr. Huberman is a neurologist and ophthalmologist from I think Stanford University. You can find him online. He's got incredible lectures and all sorts of matters that relate to he lectures biology and so forth. So you're quoting for us actually Paul's instruction to the Romans of taking every thought captive. Taking every thought captive. What does that really mean? Does that mean don't think those thoughts? Well, this is where Huberman's explanation of our neurology is really helpful. Because the more you try to not think about something, what might happen?
You will think about it.
Exactly. You can't escape it. You can't escape those limits. You know? All right. If I tell you don't do something, Maybe that's exactly what you now want to do. How do I plant the seed in your mind of what I want you to do is don't do that. So instead, take it captive. The language really is putting it to sword point. I am the guard. I am the cherub that is guarding. I have the flaming sword. And what do I have to guard and protect? Lo and behold, is my own thoughts, my own mind. That's what will control my feelings. That's what's going to control my emotions. That's what will energize my actions. The role of emotion is to guide action and energize action. Right? Emotion. Energetic and that energetic emotion. Either for good or for evil. So it begins with my thoughts. And if I am not in control of my thoughts, I'm going to be all over the place. So I have to put it to sword point. But that doesn't mean don't think it. That means
Kill it.
what?
Kill it when it becomes like.
Well, what if I kill the wrong thoughts? I can put it to sword point.
Sword.
Who goes there? Right? I am in control of you. You're my captive. Now I investigate. Now I have a few questions to ask. Yes? So every thought that comes, and by the way, have a little experiment with me just for a moment. Keep your eyes open or closed, you decide. But put your eyes like a spotlight. You know a spotlight? Pretend your eyes are a spotlight, but with your eyes closed, have a spotlight on your forehead. Your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain. You're the master of the rest. That for until you're 25 is not yet developed fully. And that's why youth is so important. So put where your forehead is, put your concentration there, where your forehead is, and just notice your thoughts. If your focus is up here, like a spotlight, just take a few moments and start counting your thoughts. Now, I would like to just go on, but actually, maybe it's enough. How many different thoughts maybe pop into your mind, into your head? How many things do you see? You count 6 different thoughts in just a few seconds. That's impressive. And that is unavoidable. It's inevitable. So the neurologist explains, if you're putting your focus right here in your prefrontal cortex, you're going to have a random appearance of thoughts, and just thoughts are just going to be showing up. Random, all sorts of stuff. Who and what decides what shows up right in our heads? Where are the thoughts coming from? And are those thoughts me? Am I those thoughts? Or, well, wait a minute, if Paul says to take every thought captive, then who is me taking captive or taking control of thoughts? Right? This is a separation of thoughts that appear in my mind, in my head, versus me. Who's the me? Who's the I that Paul is instructing to take captive my thoughts? Right? It's a very important and necessary realization that of observing and identifying the separation of me and my thoughts. Thoughts are random. And depending on where we put our focus, that randomness intensifies. And it feels uncontrollable. Okay? That is a really important starting point. I am not my thoughts. I am not my hunger. My desire for those donuts. And I control it or not. I am not my desire. I'm not my desire for the hunger. Or am I? Does my hunger desire, does that my hunger control me? And my hunger can be more than just food. My hunger can be all sorts of things. From a beautiful woman to power, to control other people's lives. And thus, we come back to the question of how do we prepare ourselves now, especially if we are youth, but even if we are older in age, how do we prepare ourselves that if it was, we will rule with Messiah and we are controlled by our desires, we will be the enemy that we hate. We are ourselves the enemy that we hate. I have to learn to separate myself from my desire. I have to learn to separate myself from what otherwise controls me. Because otherwise I will be controlled by it. And it starts with the thoughts. And but those thoughts are random. And I can't stop them. There's endless. Okay, well, not all thoughts are random. Some thoughts are memories. Some thoughts are concepts that I've inherited.
Can you share something?
Yes,
like
please.
something the same. Can you hear me? Let me come up. Before coming to faith, I always think, and I have so many doubts. Okay, so going to work, I'm thinking, while riding the jeepney, then I'm thinking, I had this question in my mind. What do I need? Why do I have so many doubts? And then I learned the answer only after coming to faith, like after a few years. The thought came to me. It's a very clear word or sentence. The word, yung sumagot sa akin, that answered me, you lack trust.
Oh, wow.
That's it's really, I'm riding the jeepney, then why do I have so many doubts? I'm not sure what to do. I don't know where when it comes to faith, I don't know how, where to go. Then that thought, that answered me, you lack trust. And then after a few years, when I came to faith, I remember that moment. Then I realized, wait, that's really what I'm missing. I really lack trust in God.
Yes.
So,
Thank you so much for that. It is so fundamental. Because without trust, we can't build anything. Trust is one of those fundamental principles that we rely on at every level going up. Is trust. And I'm not the only one who lacks it. Why do I not have trust? Might be a different answer from one to the other. And therefore the need to put the thought to sword point and investigate, interrogate it. So ask the question, why do I? What is the problem and why? Where is it coming from? So if I can come to an answer as to why do I not trust, there can be various different reasons and causes of that. Maybe very good reasons why I don't trust. Maybe I have experienced people breaking my trust again and again, and maybe in more serious ways. So what do I do about it? Let's say I don't trust because maybe I was violated, and I could have been violated emotionally, violated sexually. So what message do I then receive concerning myself and my identity if I have been violated? Though that message might control me, my personal value might be controlling me. And if that it still controls me, I'm not free. And in order to be free, I have to investigate and interrogate, is it true or is it false? Is the message that I carry true or false? Is the thought that controls me, is the feeling that controls me true or false? And if I try to just not think, then I will continue to be controlled by it. So that's the value of learning from neurologists, is our interpretation and application. If I try to just not think, it's almost an impossible pattern. But the neurologist will explain, therefore, how do you disarm is by interrogating. And following, guided by or equipped by, what's the sword, by the way? What is the, symbolically, Paul tells us, what is the sword? This is Ephesians 6 rather. Word. The Word of God, where we find the truth. That's the sword by which we interrogate. We need truth. And from truth, okay, let's say I allowed myself to commit some horrendous act. I sinned in such a way that I really harmed other people. I really hurt the people I care about. And I broke their trust. And that becomes now my bondage. Because how I'm the one who broke the trust. And I'm the one who lied. How can I recover from my own choice of action? Thus, the word of truth to liberate, and thankfully the good news in which I am redeemed from my own sin. I have to be led out from Egypt that I carry within me. And now whenever I carry that, now I hear the voice of my own sin and what I have done, I have to interrogate it and I have to control it. It's no longer true. I am no longer the sin that I chose to do. I'm no longer the person who chose to do that action. I did do it and I take responsibility for it, but I'm not that any longer.
Perhaps that's the importance of wearing the full armor.
Right, exactly. The full, because that's one aspect. There's so much more, and we need all of it in order to do this action. So I have to interrogate. I have to be in control of it, and therefore by assessing, no, it's not true. That thought, that feeling, that emotion, it's not Messiah's mind in me. It's not the word. It's not true in me. And that is how it loses its power over me. Only if I thoroughly assess it. Then it's gone. Then the power is gone. But if I don't do that, if I don't observe the thought, observe the feeling, the emotion, and have a dialogue, have a conversation where I have the power of the Word of God and therefore truth, then I will carry it for many years. So learning to do that as a skill in early years in life saves us many, many years of not having that liberty. But it's a powerful skill to have early in life that changes the quality of our adulthood. And then as adults, well, if we didn't have it, well, that's the wonderful thing we can always learn. So it's a practical tool by which we put into principle the big concepts, into one example of a practical thing to do as to how to grow and mature, starting with the maturing of our minds. Therefore, a maturing of knowing ourselves. And if I know myself, then I know my weaknesses and I know my strength. And if I know where I'm weak, then I know where I need to grow and mature, and I know where I can develop.
Yep.
So before moving on, any other comments or questions? And I really do appreciate what you both have contributed to this panel. Any more comments or questions about this concept so far?
Youth.
From the
Do you have
youth.
questions, youth?
Hindi ka na pwede makulong. Sasabihin mo, hindi ako yan eh.
Sometimes, or most of the time, your enemy is yourself. So, you can ask questions.
Kaya pala di makulong si Kimuru eh.
If you ask questions, I'll give you 50 pesos.
Wow!
I have a question.
It's quite small.
I have 5 questions.
5 years.
Hey, how old are you?
That's 250.
Miracles is still thinking.
Okay, good. All right, good. So, let's develop the theme more. We talked about the cherubim, that the cherubim are the guardians of the thrones, and that's the guardian of God's throne, and they are holding our position. They're showing us what we are supposed to do. We are supposed to guard God's throne. We are supposed to serve God's throne. And what in God's throne is made up of the principles, the values of the kingdom of heaven. So we need to know, what are the values of God? What's important? What is that? Make a list. Well, where do we find the list? Scripture. And that's why the Ten Commandments start
And
with
that's the Holy Spirit.
liberty, freedom.
The
Right?
God
So
serve.
that's a principle, that's a value that serve that. Serve and guard that. So how do you serve and how you guard? That's demonstrated in the cherubim. The cherubim are the guardians. They're doing what I'm supposed to do. So let's look at that a little bit
It's
more.
the
What do the cherubim look like?
Wow.
They have wings. They have six sets of, they have six
But in
wings.
Catholic,
Three
they
sets.
look cute babies.
What?
Yeah, oo
What
nga,
did you
no?
say?
Para sa
Diba sa Catholic, cute babies? Cherubim.
Only
They
the
have
head.
faces.
With God.
Yeah.
Four faces.
Cupid.
We
What?
learned this in Ezekiel chapter 1.
Four. Wow.
So, they have four faces. We find
Yeah,
that Ezekiel's taken up into the heavens and he sees the throne of God and he sees these fantastic visions and he sees four beasts or the cherubim with four faces. And here, here, here. What are those faces?
Something like north, south, east, west, they can see everywhere.
They see, their sight is everywhere. All right, so let's start there. If you are a guardian, how important is it for you to see everywhere? North, south, east, in all directions.
CCTV.
Martes.
CCTV. It's a CCTV.
CCTV, yes.
CCTV. 360.
And those who have power, those who have power without the value of freedom also want to see everything. How good is China's CCTV?
Satellite.
I'm a little distracted. That's so good. They can recognize an individual by their gait,
Yeah.
how they walk,
The movement.
from their movement. Because we give all the information needed. Everything that you like and love, all your photos, all your videos, everything that we put on social media is now identifying us. Complete representation of me. They know me better than I know myself.
They can
Even
even.
how I move. If they can't see my face, they see how I move, they know it's me.
Plus,
Power without God is complete tyranny of control. And that's sight. All right, to see everything. But we're talking now not about Chinese communist government. All right, Babylon the Great. It's not that, because now we're focusing on God's victory over that. All right, and us ruling with Messiah in His kingdom of the future. So God's guardians of His throne have sight in all directions. Why is that important for God? It's really the same. But as a guardian, okay, so let's think about it a little bit more. You are a guard. What's your responsibility is to protect. What's the implication of that? If your responsibility as a soldier to protect, to guard, to keep safe, what's the implication?
Be watchful. Be
Yeah.
watchful.
You are a security guard.
No blind
Your
spots.
eyes must never close.
No blind spots.
What? No blind spots.
Yeah.
All right. But that's what you're doing. What's the implication? Simple stuff. The simple beginning point. Why didn't you have a guardian to begin with? What's the implication?
So that the enemy cannot penetrate.
There's an enemy.
There's an enemy. All right. There's an enemy. That's the beginning point. The starting point is to know and recognize there is always an enemy. And the second thing is what you said, the enemy is always going to attack. He's always looking for the opportunity to attack. That's the starting point. It's always the starting point. There is always an enemy and he is always going to attack. If he can, he will. Therefore, guard the need to guard. The need to protect. And what is the first tool in our conversation? I mean, what's the first tool to be a good guardian, a good protector? Like you said, no slumber. 'Cause in my slumber,
But Eve, her eyes were open, but it says that she saw that the fruit is good for food and she ate it.
all right, let's pause on that and come back to it later.
Okay.
All right, because I still want to build up some more principles before we get to that, because that's really important. So
Guard your eyes.
we observed in these cherubim, their eyes are open. They're actually covered with eyes. They're covered with eyes. And so the principle is keep your eyes open. Always. And do not slumber. Because when you slumber, what's the problem with sleeping?
And according to the book of Proverbs, Solomon said, do not love sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said do not.
Donut.
Don't
I
Do not
say
love.
that. I don't remember saying that. Well, in that regard, I think it is also emphasizing, because if I'm sleeping through the day, then what am I not doing today? Working. And if I'm not working when I can work, then I won't have what I need when I can't work. I won't have food, I won't have sustenance. So work when you're able to work. So, okay, so again, the principle is having your eyes always open. Because whatever blind spot I have, whenever I'm not paying attention, and therefore that's the idea of having eyes open is paying attention. Always paying attention. If I forget that there is always an enemy, then I will not be paying attention. My eyes can be open and I can be sleeping. I'm not paying attention. And therefore I will be caught off guard by the enemy who's therefore better than me. Because he's not slumbering. So therefore the guardians of the throne of God are always paying attention. They see everything and see everything. All right, so let's look at the next aspect. They have 4 faces. What type of faces are they? Lion. What? Human. Eagle.
Was there not?
The lamb is the king who sacrifices himself.
Yeah.
Right? The king, the ultimate principle, the one who loves most, is the one who puts his life down. So that's where the lion becomes the lamb. The lamb who is slain and yet lives. Okay? So yeah, we have these creatures. We have the eagle, we have the lion, we have the human. What do these images share in common? The lion, the eagle, what do they share in common with one another?
They have sharp vision.
The eagle especially,
Yeah.
high up, and their sight is really sharp.
And also the lion.
And the lion also, yes. And so therefore with that, they become, in the skies, in the fields, what are they?
They are both kings.
What?
King of the sky, king of the...
Kings of their territory.
Yeah.
And master of the skies,
You're awake.
and master of the fields, of the earth. They are the apex predator of their territory. Okay? All right? So if you have if I'm a human being compared to a lion, what does the lion have that I don't have? His voice is much scarier than mine. What? Strength. He's indeed a lot stronger than I am. What else? In what way is he better than me more? He's stronger than me, he's scarier than me. What else is he better than me? He said strength. His teeth are much bigger and stronger, and his claws are much bigger and stronger, and his skin is much better, stronger every way. So how can I, as a human being, as an individual, overcome that predator? I am his prey. How do I overcome the danger of the lion? How do I overcome the danger of the eagle? How do I overcome the serpent? Whatever is the chief predator that is in my territory where I live, or where we live, what?
You need to study.
I need to study them. I
Your
need to
behavior, everything.
Exactly. Their qualities of what makes them strong, and their behavior as to how do they attack,
Your weakness.
therefore their weaknesses. Right, exactly. I need to study the enemy. I need to understand the danger that I am in. And if I don't even know that I'm in danger, I'm already defeated. But when we gather together, what qualities do human beings have that we are able to defeat the serpent, to defeat the lion, to defeat the eagle?
We are blessed.
Intelligence.
We can think, and we can plan, and we can calculate, and we can be wise. And what did you say over here?
Intelligence.
Intelligence. And we can go on to name the qualities by which we have overcome. And so then, but wait a minute.
Super daddy. Super daddy.
So it's not four different creatures. It's one creature with four heads. It's one creature with the eagle, with the lion. They are a composition of all of them. What does that represent? Is essentially when people study the predator, and we overcome the predator, then we control that territory. We now then become the apex predator of that territory. But then we will expand our territory, and that expansion of the territory, we find a new predator that we didn't know before. We discovered what was unknown to us. We didn't even know that it was unknown to us. Now we discover, and it takes time, but we learn, and we expand our capacity, and we become another apex predator. And the Egyptians, they depicted this in a very, very clever way, in a very effective way. You ever looked at the pictures of the gods of Egypt? You ever looked at any of their pictures? Kind of animal heads on human bodies, male or female. But they take the crocodile and put it on a body, a human body. What are they saying? What's
The animals
They have
are
mastered.
above the
They have mastered that.
They have mastered that animal's characteristics. Okay? So, the serpent then. Oh, there's a lot of good coffee there. Oh, is it broken? Okay.
Yes, it's
So let's take a minute to All right. Coffee break, but not walking over there. I'll just take a short pause there.
Yoel, I understand that
eagles hunt during daytime, and lions hunt during nighttime. How do you compare it to if you're a guardian? Would you rather relieve yourself or this guard will it be relieving himself?
So it's a great question. The Egyptians were taught thinking about that very carefully. And so when we look at the Egyptian belief of the responsibility of the king, the pharaoh is likened unto the hawk. The king is a hawk. He's up in the skies, excellent sight, and he's above all, so he sees all. And his eyes are both open. And his eyes are the sun and the moon. One eye is the sun, governing the day. The other eye is the moon, governing the night. So his eyes are always open, and he sees both in the day, and he sees also at night. That is your king. That's the responsibility. That's who you make your king. That's his responsibility, and that's what he needs to do. So with that in mind, we can that is in agreement with, we agree with that. Meaning when we open scripture in the creation story, what we disagree with is the worship of the sun. Because they deify. The sun is the most important god for the Egyptians. So they worship the sun. And they worship the moon. They worship these. And so they have their names. And then when we open the creation story, what we find is it is no names. When God creates these bodies of light, it's not the sun. He doesn't create the sun. Because the sun, Shemesh, is the name of the god of the sun. Shemesh is not the sun, it's the god of the sun. Whom they worship. So there's no Shemesh in creation. There is the greater light that governs the day. But there's no moon. The moon is Yereach. Yereach is the name of the god of the moon. So there's no moon. They worship the moon as well. So there's no sun, there's no moon. Because those are the names of the gods. So instead, there's the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And so if the audience are people who worship the sun and the moon and the stars, then the message is, no, they're not gods. They're created by the Creator, who is so much greater than those that you serve. Serve the Creator. But we agree with you that what should you do is govern. But you don't govern only the day, you also govern the night. And there are the dangers of the day, and there's the dangers of the night. They're different dangers. And you need to have your eyes open to both. So you're absolutely right. It's a question that they were thinking about. And the Bible is, on one hand, disagreeing, and on the other hand, agreeing. Disagreeing that you should worship or fear these gods, but agreeing the principle is correct and necessary. And we are supposed to be the government or those who rule. Alright, so thank you for that question. So it's okay.
You like coffee?
Sure.
Coffee naman na.
I'll leave the donut for the end. I have to see if I can practice one more hour of self-control. Self-restraint. You're all my witnesses. I'm almost there. Right. So let's come back to this idea. And then I want to tie this into Yeshua's teaching. So the Egyptians, they were very clever in communicating the idea, the concept, that in order to overcome the enemy, like you said, you have to study your enemy. So if the snake is cunning, what do I need to do to overcome the snake? More cunning. I have to be more cunning. Okay? And it's the same principle. Whatever is the character of that enemy that was a predator, I have to learn and become better. And so when I do that effectively, the Egyptians represented that by take the head of that, take the head of that creature and put it on a human being. So they say the human being is like this animal. He's like the crocodile. He's like the hawk. He's like the serpent, and so forth. That's supposed to simply be a concept. The problem is they turned into gods, and worship those gods. And that's where then the God of Israel says, you did so well. You should have stopped one step earlier. Don't worship them as gods. But the principle is an agreement. Where do we find, regarding the God's throne, is one creature with these different faces, combined into one. Right? Therefore, when human beings overcome the predator, they become the alpha predator. But now they overcome a second alpha predator, and a third and a fourth. And now what's next? We become that alpha predator. But then what is then the next great danger? What do we people then face as the next super predator?
We face other people.
The other people who have embodied the characters of all those predators. They become the greatest danger to our people. But if we stay closed in our one territory, we become masters of our territory. But we might then get invaded by others who have mastered many territories. And they then are more capable than we are, if they have those characteristics under their control. And so what becomes the greatest enemy of humanity is humanity. But those human beings who have many faces. Okay? That's the idea, that's the concept. And that's why, no matter what culture, you probably will find the dragon. You'll probably find the composite creature of the dragon. It might take different shapes and different forms, but they're also in the Bible. Where's the dragon in the Bible?
Revelation.
Revelation is named, yes. That ancient serpent, the devil, Satan, the dragon. But where do we find it in the Hebrew scriptures? Leviathan, or Behemoth.
No.
The description of these creatures are composite creatures. And they breathe, the Leviathan breathes fire. Why does the dragon breathe fire? Oh, wait, the dragon is representative of human beings, human society, that becomes powerful. It becomes the ultimate, not just the alpha predator, but the ultimate combination of all alpha predators. And then the dragon breathes fire. What is breathing fire?
Distraction.
It can be. Or it can be something else. So yes, fire can destroy.
What's your question, sorry?
Why does the dragon breathe fire? If the dragon is human civilization, is human character, ability, why breathe fire? Do we breathe fire? What's our relationship with fire?
Shows how words affect.
Nice. How powerful art is speech. This is one of our great characteristics of our humanity, our advantage over all other creatures. Is our ability to learn to use sounds to communicate meaning, message, and language. And with that, we can develop also tools. We can share knowledge in our experiment, in our experience. And with that, with our creativity and our investigative spirit, with our curiosity, we develop tools to substitute our weaknesses. We don't have claws, but we can make swords and axes, spears. So the development of technology for tools, and with that, we can make ourselves stronger. We can substitute. We can compensate for our weaknesses. But how do I figure out this strange substance in the earth? I can extract it, and it's a strong material. I figure out this is I can call it metal. So we can communicate. Oh yeah, we know metal. But how do I go from metal taken from the rock, from the earth, into a sword? What do I need to get from A to Z? Fire. Exactly. Fire with what? What do I need to turn fire from a destructive force to a controlled resource that I can make much more hot and use it to my ends, what do I need?
You need a forge.
I need a forge,
Blacksmith.
but a blacksmith, I need knowledge to get there. Those are the people who can do it.
I need intention.
They need intention, they need purpose, they need knowledge. And you can understand that transformation of this material into that tool with knowledge. How did you manipulate substance? Surely your knowledge is magical. And therefore the blacksmiths of the different eras, people feared them, they're magical. Their knowledge is power and magic. And magic is the manipulation of magic. It's the changing of magic. And the manipulation of people in time and space. And so the relationship between knowledge to technology.
Is it true that fallen angels taught mankind to make swords or knives or dagger?
It's a good story. that's in our stories. The intention of the story is to identify the source of knowledge.
Yeah.
That is from above. And so, whether it's Jewish or Greek and so forth, who brings the knowledge as to how to control fire?
Yep.
That source. That's what they want you to focus on. So, but I just want to construct these concepts that are in shared cultures, but we lose the concept when we forget the focus, and we start to be afraid of, and we lose ourselves into magic and superstition.
Yeah.
When we turn, because otherwise, cultures develop the hierarchy of values according to the geography and needs. And you communicate what's important through the rituals. You express and you educate the next generation. These are values, we need these. And therefore they turn these into gods. And once it's turned into God, you serve that, and eventually that turns into a superstition. And the superstition steals from me the wisdom that the knowledge was meant to serve me by. So we lose it when we become superstitious. And all peoples, look at Jewish people long enough, you'll find how superstitious we are. Okay, everybody becomes superstitious.
Everybody loves a good story.
Everybody loves and loses, and then tragically the story loses its wisdom. It loses its function. But this is the concept that is developed in Scripture, and you can see also that the guardian of the throne of God, the cherubim, is this kind of concept. Okay, not necessarily to be taken literally, but the concept to be taken literally. So now let's take that and apply it in Yeshua's teaching. And this is in Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter 10. Let's read it. Let me open up. So. Yes, but skip over the list of the 12 disciples. We don't need to take the time. Start reading verse 5 until verse 16 is enough. 5 to 16.
Matthew 10, 5 to 16.
Yes.
Okay. These 12 Yeshua sent out after instructing them, do not go in the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter any city of the Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Freely you receive, freely give. Do not acquire gold or silver or copper for your money belts, or a bag for your journey, or even 2 coats, or sandals, or a staff, for the worker is worthy of his support. And whatever city or village you enter, inquire who is worthy in it, and stay at his house until you leave the city. As you enter the house, give it your greeting. If the house is worthy, give it your blessing of peace. But if it is not worthy, take back your blessing of peace. Whoever does not receive you, nor heed your words, as you go out of that house or that city, shake the dust of your feet. Truly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be sure as serpents and innocent as doves.
Thank you. So, where does Yeshua send the disciples? To whom does he send them? Does he not send? To whom does Yeshua not send the
Not
disciples?
sent to the Gentiles.
So to whom does he send the disciples?
The lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Of who?
The lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Sending them to the Jewish people. So, therefore, how does he describe the Jewish people that he's sending his Jewish disciples to?
Lost sheep.
Lost sheep. And what message are they to carry to these lost sheep? Remember what we said before of the ruler, the king is a shepherd. The purpose is good governance, so that the flock prospers, and then we prosper. So that now the shepherd is sending his servants to find the sheep that are lost, that wandered away. And what's the message that they're supposed to carry? What are they supposed to declare?
The shepherd is coming.
The shepherd is coming.
The kingdom is at hand.
The kingdom is at hand. Okay. You might also find it translated, the kingdom is near. And I don't know that I'm right, but I suspect that maybe he used the Hebrew expression "ka'ov," the Hebrew expression for near.
Invitation.
Sorry?
There was an invitation.
An invitation, but let's think a little bit more. If he's using the expression "the kingdom of heaven is ka'ov," ka'ov means near, but it also is the word for your kinev, your internal organs.
It's inside.
It's inside. How near is the kingdom?
It's inside.
It's inside.
Ganun pala kalapit.
How is that possible? Well, wait a minute, they're lost, meaning they've gone away. And what's the rabbinic idea of repentance? He's calling the people to return. Shuvah is to return, right? Meaning I've been walking away, and I hear the voice of the king, my father, my king, and I stopped and I turned around and I returned. I'm coming back. So I was there already. I've been walking away. Now I'm coming home. When did God give the kingdom that they are now lost to? When did God give the kingdom to Israel? Hello.
Hello.
Ladies are youth leader.
You want to repeat everything?
She's our youth leader.
Ah, nice. So we had the pleasure of your daughter last night?
Yes.
Yeah, so sweet. She's so sweet. We're looking at Matthew chapter 10. So, when did God give the kingdom to Israel? What's the beginning point? If Yeshua is saying, come back, then they had to have left. So when did they have the kingdom? Garden of Eden is a lovely beginning point. Maybe at Mount Sinai, we can start there.
For Israel.
For Israel.
Covenant with Abraham.
Covenant with Abraham. Based on the foundation of covenant of Abraham, the seed of Abraham is now gathered together at Mount Sinai. And God says to them in Exodus chapter 19, you are my kingdom of priests. Within my kingdom, you are the priests. Before we looked at the metaphor of firstborn sons, meaning we have a responsibility to all of our brothers. We have a responsibility to serve and protect our brothers, to provide for our brothers, the revelation of God. Now in Exodus chapter 19, the metaphor is slightly different. In my kingdom, you're the priests. So what is Israel supposed to do as priests? But the same thing. Priests are to facilitate people's worship of God. Draw them near to God, to facilitate their worship. Right? Once again, you're servants of the people. In this case, if Israel's priests, who are the people of the kingdom that they're supposed to serve? All the rest of the nations. But now, in Matthew 10, the servants are lost. They're not serving the nations. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, therefore, don't go to the Greeks. Don't go to the Gentiles. Don't go to the Samaritans. Go to the lost servants, so that they will do what they're supposed to do. They too rise up to their responsibility. So once again, the call to responsibility, to responsible life. And how does it start is, just as God gave you the kingdom at Mount Sinai, you carry it in you, and you've walked away, so the kingdom of heaven is near. Where are you going to find it? It's still in you, and you have to live it. You have to be it. And then, go forth to the ends of the earth. With the Great Commission, from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth, right? Okay, so now next. He tells the disciples, some places are going to receive you, other places are going to reject you. How does he describe those places who might reject you? And they are now focusing on, let me go back to Matthew. Okay. In verse 16. Behold, I am sending you out as sheep.
Among the wolves.
So this Jewish rabbi is calling his own people wolves. I'm sending you as sheep. Wait, sheep? Versus wolves. Sheep versus wolves. That's not a fair fight. And so he's warning them, our people, amongst our people are many wolves. So where do you find the enemy? Remember we talked about the cherubim. You have to know that there's always an enemy. And in this case, where do you find the enemy? Is it the Romans?
It's among us.
It's amongst ourselves. The enemy is amongst us. And therefore, what do you do?
But the wolves are in sheep's clothing.
So sorry to hear that.
The latter part of Matthew 10 is heal against your family, your household. Okay?
The hardest thing to do is to face criticism and attack within your own family.
Family. Yeah.
It's the hardest thing.
That's verse 30, right? Of Matthew 10.
Right.
Kaya pala yung first
Yeah,
mo
yeah, you're
talaga
absolutely
nasa-share.
right.
Ang family
Absolutely
mo.
right. And is it just some families? Is it just Jewish families?
Temptation.
Oh.
Actually, you can eat.
Identify the enemy. Give away my donut. Right here.
Was this the parable of the sower?
Mm. Very nice. Yes, very good. Absolutely. Because and he's giving the wisdom there as to
Those who received the word, they rejected it, the seeds.
yes, yes. But what goes up amongst the seeds are the weeds, and these are the righteous and the evil. But he says, when does he tell them to harvest? Does he tell them to take the weeds out before the harvest, or at the harvest?
At the harvest.
Yeah, at the harvest. Why not take them out when it's young? Why not take, if you see the weeds are growing, why not take them out right before they do any damage? Just take them out first. Why not?
They look so much like the root.
I will probably make a mistake. If I identify you as a wheat and you are actually wheat, I have committed such a serious sin against you. And I'm cutting you down. And so be very slow to judge. I would probably make a serious mistake because I have such a big log in my eyes, I'm blind, and I don't even know. I don't recognize, and I think that you are, I attack you as my enemy when actually you're not your me. So yeah, thank you for that. So it's the hardest thing because it is in our own family. So therefore it's the hardest thing. So, okay, he's warning his disciples, I'm sending you out amongst the wolves. And you're sheep, by the way. So therefore, how to do it? How do you achieve this mission? What character do you need to have? Verse 16.
Shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves.
Shrewd. As serpents.
The wisest.
Wise, cunning, shrewd. It's the same conversation as what we were having before. All right, the same concept as the cherubim, this composition of different characteristics that we learn from those other predators. In this case, Yeshua is highlighting and focusing on that predator that we all share in common, that goes at our feet and takes us at the heel. I don't know about you, but I don't like snakes.
I don't like
snakes. Okay? But Yeshua is saying in order to go out into the society, and it's our society is Babylon the Great. We are Romanized. The enemy is within us. And in order to overcome the problem, it's not to say, oh, it's the Christians, it's the Catholics, it's the Muslims. No, where do I find the enemy is very near to home. And in order to overcome and to win my enemy back, I need to be like the serpent. So I need to learn, what do I need to learn? What character do I need to embody? Does God really want me to be like a snake? Is Yeshua really teaching me to be? Is Yeshua teaching me to be a snake or like a snake?
Like
That's a
the
big difference.
characteristic.
Because the instruction is not only become like the serpent, but while I am cunning like the serpent, I am protected and I am safeguarded by what? What's the other
The
characteristic?
dog.
Innocent as doves.
So it's both together. I have to somehow learn to be innocent, to be righteous. And with that innocence, with that righteous, and when I say innocent, I don't, just innocent and righteous. That as a safeguard for needing to function, when needing to function, in the cunning and skill as a serpent. We need to have a structure where we are learning both. But the younger we learn, the better. In our youth, if we learn that we have to face real dangers, we need to be more cunning than the enemy. We need to be like a serpent, but to not be a serpent. Maintain innocence. How do you do that? How do you do that?
make sure.
Gentle.
Yes, please.
This is 1 Corinthians 9:22. This Paul. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, so that I may by all means save some.
Yeah, master.
Thank you.
Master.
Identify with and be indeed. But it's only going to be effective if it's true. Because if I'm not genuine, we recognize fakeness.
Fakeness,
We really
yes.
don't like it. Yeah? We really don't like when somebody's fake. So, this concept that Yeshua is teaching his disciples very early in their work life is the principle that is a very deep principle in the Torah that we can observe and we see. But how to learn to be that? Well, thankfully we have some more text. All right, so thankfully we have Proverbs. So let's go a little bit into Proverbs. In Proverbs, the first couple chapters, we already referenced Proverbs a little bit in chapter 3, but let's just take a little bit of the first chapter. If you read
Proverbs.
the first 4 verses is good enough for me.
Proverbs 1.
Proverbs chapter 1, first 4 verses.
1 to 4.
The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive, to the youth knowledge and discretion.
All right, thank you. All right, so his purpose as a king, inspired by the Spirit of God, he writes over 1,000 proverbs, and he teaches Israel. 3,000 proverbs, over 3,000 proverbs. It's a lot of proverbs of wisdom, observation of life, how to function in it successfully and not be stupid. Basically it, okay? And here, in the beginning of this collection, this limited collection, it tells us how to find knowledge, how to find wisdom. And the definition of wisdom that I really like is to know what to do, how to take knowledge, because you can be very, very knowledgeable, right? You can have a lot, very, very smart, you can be brilliant, high IQ, very, very smart. Does that mean that you're wise? So what is wisdom? Contrast from knowledge. What is wisdom?
Wisdom is the fear of the Lord.
Okay, very good.
The beginning. Yeah.
That is the beginning. That's how you find it.
Fear of God is the
So we wanna
beginning
get-
of wisdom.
So we need to come there. But first we need to know what is this. It's the beginning of wisdom, but what is wisdom? It's the beginning of wise. So one definition that I have appreciated so much is to know what knowledge to apply in
In
any
a
given situation.
situation.
And that requires insight, understanding and insight. So to be able to read a situation, to understand what's happening, to have insight into complex circumstances, and to know from my wealth of knowledge what to do now.
Yeah.
Serious problems right now. Wisdom is knowing what to do. So where do we find wisdom? Well, these proverbs are for dad, for knowledge, for wisdom, chokhmah, right? For musal, for discipline. Learning discipline is the act of learning how to control oneself and to better and improve oneself. So I have a vision of what I want to be, but how do I get there? I need training,
Yes.
right, coach? What to do without the discipline? I don't get anywhere. And
Yeah.
that is sacrifice. Sacrifice is understanding. I have a goal. I would love to be a doctor, but right now I don't even understand. I don't know. I know nothing. I'd love to be a lawyer. I'd love to. Maybe I'd love to be one who's responsible for others. Good governance. That's the thing that we were talking about in terms of the kingdom. We will reign with him in the kingdom. How to be able to be a responsible servant of the realm of God, of the kingdom and the people of God. How to do that? Well, if I don't even have a goal, I don't know where to aim for, but how do I get to that goal is sacrifice. And sacrifice is discipline, is not doing what I want to do, and doing what I need to learn, being trained. So this is musar, this is discipline, through instruction. Into lahavin and binah, to understand sayings of insight. He's giving us insight to learn how to understand human dynamics and complexities of family and community, and have to understand things and have insight. Then, to take all that and put it to good use for righteousness and for justice, being upright. It says here in English, and equity. In Hebrew, it's to be upright, to be straight. Right? To be straight, to be upright, not corrupt. And then verse 4, to give to one who is simple, one who is naive. And that could be a youth, or that could be somebody in their old age and has never grown up. Is still ignorant and naive. But the focus here is on youth. Because even if in my old age, if I'm that way, I'm still like a youth. Okay, so we focus on youth. We give to one who is young, who is youth. Because without experience, I don't know anything. I don't know that I don't know anything. So that's a big problem. I don't even know what I should learn. But here are these proverbs exposing me, leading me to all the many things that I can and maybe should learn. Because if I don't, I will be a fool. And the worst kind of fool is an evil fool. I start out as a simple fool, and eventually I become an evil fool. What to do? Well, these sayings of wisdom, they give to the simple, they give to the naive, they give adama. In English it translates as prudence. Is that what you read? Prudence? What did you read?
Give prudence to the naive.
Give prudence to the naive. Well, prudence, this is a fun word, because adama, it does mean prudence perhaps, or craftiness, but the first time we encounter this Hebrew word in the Hebrew Bible is in regards to the creation story, describing man and woman were arum, were naked and without shame. Man and woman were naked without shame. That's the end of chapter 2. And then the beginning, the opening of chapter 3, the very next verse is the serpent was arum, was more arum than all the other creatures of the field. So it's 2 verses back to back. Chapter 2, chapter 3. 2 verses. First talking about humanity. How do we become one flesh? The two should become one flesh. And how? If they're naked without shame. And the word for naked is arum. Okay, arum. We're naked. So, what is that? Well, we can explore it briefly. I'm completely exposed. And I know you see me. And well, right now I would feel pretty ashamed and embarrassed if I'm indeed naked and you're all staring at me naked. Okay? So, I know what you see. And therefore, I'm shamed and humiliated, uncomfortable to say the least. But not in the garden. In the Garden of Delight, I know what you see, and I still have no shame. I am that innocent. But that's not the way I feel now. Okay, now I clothe myself, I cover myself, so that I will cover my vulnerability. Because what makes me different from an animal, and animals are usually down here, right? That soft underbelly is safe down here. And with all my fur. Okay, maybe I'm a little furry. I remember when I was 17 or 18, I was 17 when I was here first, and in that conference, at first at BMF, and I was with the kids, and they looked at my hairy legs. Like, oh, Suffering. You do too. So why are they surprised by me? And then at one point they put one out. Oh, teacher. Oh yes, I see. I feel it too. Okay, so naked. All right, but we're not like animals. Before we stand upright, and our nakedness is exposed. And therefore, we can think of it as our vulnerability is exposed. And therefore, in our human relationships, especially the subject is about husband and wife, all right? It's one thing to be physically naked. It's another thing to be emotionally and intellectually naked. To expose ourselves so that I truly know, I know that you see me, and I'm without shame. Well, usually I don't want other people to really know me. Don't want, because people have proven themselves to not be trustworthy, not to be safe. I don't want you to know me in depth. There's a surface of me that I can present, and that's okay. It's the me that I show the world, as opposed to the me that is right private. But to be naked is to remove that outer garment and let the truth be seen. That is, where do we find that? If we experience that, then we know that we're in the garden of delight. And thus, between husband and wife is where it's found. And by the way, the image of God is not seen until husband and wife become one flesh. There, female and male, there is where the image and likeness of God is found. So how important is that? Well, that is a womb. A womb in vulnerability exposed. You're falling asleep. You're falling asleep. I'm almost going to win my bet. We're almost done. I'm going to go maybe half an hour. Okay. So, so that vulnerability and exposed without shame, that Hebrew word avum is then the next verse applied to the serpent. The serpent is more avum, translated cunning, crafty. Let's start with vulnerable. He's more vulnerable than all the other creatures. Why? Right? What's vulnerable? How is a snake vulnerable? Where do you find him, first of all?
He's upright. The serpent used to be upright.
Okay. Okay, maybe. Yeah. We do see that they had something that used to be maybe legs, is possible. But where do you find the snake? Let's just think about our common experience.
On the ground.
On the ground.
On the ground.
On its belly. And without these.
Yeah.
And therefore, the seed of the woman will crush its head. Okay? Snake is more vulnerable, and in his vulnerability, more than all the other creatures, what does he have to be?
More cunning.
More cunning, more crafty. The weaker I am, the more I have to develop character to self-protect and save, and then attack from there. All right? So that's the progression of linguistic progression of idea and concept. That's aum. Same word describes humanity, same word describes the snake. But in translation, one is naked, the other is crafty, so we lose it. Okay, but one word describes those two. And that's the same word that's now applied here by Proverbs, by Solomon, about the problem of youth. The problem of youth is we're naive. We don't know anything.
Oh, I'm connected. Sorry.
Yeah.
You mentioned the abyss later, like the unknown. The unknown, the abyss.
Yes, the unknown.
So it's like there's a chance for it to become bad.
Yeah.
There's a chance for it to become good.
Yes, that's the beauty of youth.
Yeah.
The beauty of youth is nobody knows what's in that person. Nobody knows what's in this life. And she can become anything. If the society is structured to enable it. A free society that is free in the moral and ethics of God, unlimited potential. There's no limit to, there's eternity in the hearts of men. But if the society is a tyranny, it won't be realized. It won't be even found. Or unbelievable unlimited evil can be brought forth from the same individual. Okay? This is the problem, because it's the same. So we start with as naive, we start without knowledge, we start with we don't even know what we don't know. And therefore, how does the king address it? Proverbs. Sayings of wisdom, of knowledge, of insight that will teach the innocent, teach the naive, the simple. But what will it teach them? To be Aum. That same word that is describing the serpent, and that's the link to Yeshua's teaching. Yeshua is teaching his disciples, his youth, his young ones, his disciples. You need to be cunning like a serpent. You need to be Aum, but also innocent. And what is it that will teach me, according to Proverbs, how to be both cunning and innocent, with knowledge and with purpose? What? The Word of God. The commandments.
You have an option to choose the three,
Got it?
life and the evil, the serpent.
Yes. You have this and you have that. Which one are you going to choose?
And Yeshua did that, like when the serpent asked him questions, right? When the evil asked him about turn the stone to bread.
Right, yes, yes.
He used the word of God.
There will be those temptations. Yes, exactly. And yeah.
In Psalm 90, verse 7, it says, the Torah makes the simple wise.
Exactly.
What is the sentence?
One sentence and it says it all. The Proverbs is breaking it down for us. The Torah gives us the wisdom that we need
If
in
you
our
reject
simple
Allah, you reject
life.
wisdom. You become a fool.
The Torah is full. What is the Torah? The Torah is full of stories,
Yes.
examples of people's lives where we really mess up, or maybe we find the knowledge to do what's right.
So they have to be cunning as serpent and innocent
What to
as
do,
dove.
how to live in
Because
such
it
a
has
way that's going to go well for
sila
us.
sa
And
paligid.
then, not only as individuals and families, it is full of instruction for a kingdom. How does a kingdom function well? What laws will give your courts of law, of justice, righteous rulings, so that you will protect the innocent and punish the evil, and give prosperity to the citizens? There has to be a list of laws that are good laws. We all agree that law is important. We disagree on what is a good law and what's a bad law. That's why the divine source, that these are God's words, it's His laws, His commandments, that therefore they're trustworthy, they're true,
They're
good, and they're going to bring goodness to the realm. And that is how, from a youth, an individual, that I can become, if I grow up in these words, if I grow up in these instructions, if I study these commandments, if I study these precepts, these laws, they will expose me. I will start to discover what I didn't know. And I will learn, oh, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of injustice. There's a lot of evil. And I will learn to distinguish, oh, there's evil, but then there's also good. And the good can overcome it, and we can choose. So it is in a time period of learning, in a time period of living, that as I study, and then as I live, as I do the commandments, I become the disciple of the commandments. Which, by the way, is what we call transitioning from a youth to an adult. A bar mitzvah. I become a son or a disciple, or a daughter or a disciple of the commandments. Now, at this age, I start to do the commandments, and by doing the commandments, they train me. They teach me and they train me. I become their disciple, so that I grow in wisdom. I grow in knowledge. I a growing insight, and I know what to do that is maintaining righteousness, justice,
Pagdating na
holiness.
kailangan
So
naintindihan niya na.
by the time my beard starts to turn gray, when I trim my beard, I look in the thing, oh, it's not all black anymore. By the time it starts to change colors, I might have some of God's wisdom and the experience of life. And therefore, I become an elder. What is an elder in Hebrew? One who has a beard that is now gray with God.
And ngayon sa mga youth romance.
Alright, so that's the concept and principle. But when Yeshua is teaching his disciples, how do you bring the people back? How do you find those who are lost and bring them back to the kingdom that is in their hearts, that is in their minds? You need to know that there's wolves, and you need to be cunning as a serpent. And how do you become cunning without becoming an evil serpent? Is through the notes.
So, babalik ka to. You need to go back to the Torah.
Back to what we forgot.
Back to the basics.
Pero kasi ginagawa ko.
I deserve a donut?
Yeah, you deserve
Yes.
All 3 boxes.
All 3 boxes, wow. You really want me to get a stand? Any comments or questions about this concept?
The youth?
Do you want to ask a question?
Can you repeat it in Tagalog?
No problem.
Did you understand what you
Teach me
were saying?
From the top?
From the beginning.
Did you understand what you were saying? You need to go back to the Torah because the Torah will make you
From the
wise,
top.
so that you can discern what is right and what is wrong. Any question you have donuts, remember?
And you get 50 pesos.
Don't be shy.
Yes. Oh, okay. If you were bringing it to me, then I cannot resist. Because it would be offensive to me. I don't want to offend you, right? No, thank you, Susan.
Very good.
Not bad.
This is Dunkin.
Oh, that means I need to dump it myself, right?
Dunkin' Donut. Wow, talaga matitikman niya lahat.
Yes, sir.
Ano yung donuts? Wala tayo dito.
We have a question.
Manila.
We have 50 pesos over here.
Is the Torah the only source of wisdom?
Sorry, what?
Is the Torah the only source of wisdom?
No. That's a really important question. As I tried to allude to, the Torah has a lot of cross-references to outside peoples.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of point of reference to that the Egyptians would have understood, using language and concepts that the Egyptians had and understood, using concepts in language that the Babylonians had and understood. And what the Torah does, what God's doing through the Hebrews, is communicating to those people who have no memory of their Creator, don't know them, and therefore have problems in their idolatry, in their morality, in their justice, but they also have a lot of concepts that the Torah agrees with. Like what I described in relation to the character of, learning the character of. So what that means essentially is that the Torah is having a dialogue with these other nations and saying, you have a lot of knowledge, insight, and wisdom. And here is where we agree with one another. But this is where we disagree and where you're wrong. And if we identify where we're wrong, we identify where we are weak and will destroy ourselves. Why, therefore, Pharaoh will be responsible for the destruction of his kingdom when God judges the gods of Egypt. You're responsible. Not God, you're responsible. With all the wisdom you have, here are the problems that destroy you. So therefore, no, the claim is not that the Torah is the only source. What the Torah is doing is aligning us to identify where we're right and where we're wrong. Because otherwise, we don't have a divine source to tell us that truth. We only have human interaction where we agree or disagree, and well, take it or leave it. Right? I'm no different from you essentially, so I agree with you or disagree with you. But now we're both coming to say, oh wait a minute, this is God. His authority is what is giving the weight of the assessment. The Torah is assessing our cultural morality and understanding. And in that assessment, we have God's approval of this is good, this is good, this is no good, this is no good.
It's
I
a
think-
guide.
What?
It's a guide.
Or a guide.
I think that is important because I see in many messianics that if it's not in Torah, I don't need to bother about that. Like they reject teachings, especially of Paul. That Paul has many teachings that they say, oh, that's not in the Torah, so don't worry about that. We don't need that.
What essentially is being rejected is, in that case, critical insight as to how to do something very difficult. And that is to take content of what God spoke to ancient people from foreign culture, foreign land, and apply that in a new circumstance with a different people, a different culture, and different needs. When God gave commandments to Israel, He gives them in the context of the Babylonians and the Egyptians and the Canaanites, the neighborhood, the culture, the problems, God's revelation. They just have to do it. It's applicable, it's relevant. But that's 3,400 years ago at Mount Sinai. Now in the first century, 1,400 years later,
Very different.
completely different. All right, everything is different now. The new world have different problems, different complexities, different circumstances. How do we take that ancient revelation of God and apply it in our day to day? That's really hard. That's a real challenge. And so now when people reject that, that's what Yeshua is doing, that's what Paul is doing, that's what Yochanan is doing, that's what Peter is doing. When people are rejecting that, you reject the guide as to how to do that for us 2,000 years later, or 3,400 years from Sinai. We live in an extremely complicated era. Extremely complicated era. And we need God's insight. We need His wisdom. And they're found in His commandments. But how to apply an ancient command to a very different world?
Yeah.
We need a guide. And that's we study and understand Paul in his letters. That can instruct us and teach us how to do it, because that's what he was doing. Now, that's one rational, logical argument. That's not even mentioning the belief of the inspiration of the Spirit of God in writing those letters. Okay, that's without even mentioning it. That's a whole another weightiness of respect. And anyway, why is it that people believe that those letters are inspired by the Spirit of God? Is observation. How many people, how many congregations, how many assemblies are relying on that text to guide us? That's how a text becomes canon. It becomes recognized to be inspired by God. And you observe how many people rely on it for living, and how many future texts, future writings are relying on that text. That's the process.
So does it mean that there are things in the Torah that are not relevant to us in our day, in our modern times? And in the same way that Paul's teaching during his time are not applicable to us. Like, for example, women should be quiet. I do not allow women to speak
What's the problem here?
because I talk a lot. Personal pala.
May hugot na siya.
May hugot.
I think it's about what you need to do or what you do in the synagogue.
In a gathering like
All right, so that's a nice example.
spiritual gathering.
All right, so when we observe Paul's statements and regulations for women in the community, I would argue we don't find that in the Torah. Instead, the famous Proverbs 31 describes
The woman.
superwomen.
Yeah.
Amazing, incredible. Not only is she a successful businesswoman, she also has the Torah of Chesed on her tongue. She
The
teaches
instructions
loyalty,
of kindness.
kindness, loyalty, covenant loyalty, Chesed. And she teaches that Torah, that instruction. Not only that, she, with all of her wealth and her ability, she has all these servants in her house. But she gets up before all of them to prepare for them, to serve them, so that they can serve the household. Not only that, she serves her husband in such a way that he is able to focus on very other things. He doesn't have to worry about any of these things. Where does he sit? He sits in the gates. And why the gates? The gates, that's where the court of justice was sitting. The elders sit in the gates, and that's where people go to find justice. All right? You stepped on my toes, we're going to the elders. And they will rule between us. And then they find, oh, wait a minute, I have no witnesses to prove that he stole my donut. But he's guilty. No. He's innocent until you can prove that he is guilty. And that's what the elders are doing. And they can only do that because there's a strong woman of integrity at home taking care of everything. All right, so that's the Israelite woman. Impressive. But that doesn't sound the way in which Paul is describing women in his day. What's the change? What's the difference? The Greco-Roman world is making all the difference. In the Greco-Roman world, they have the woman is truly inferior, and it has everything to do with a sexual understanding. I won't go into detail because maybe that's not so comfortable. But depending on how they perceive the sexual act, there is a superior and inferior. It wasn't to do with male or female. It had everything to do with the sexual act. If you want to know more, we can talk about it maybe later. So therefore, the women were inferior because of that. And if that's dominating the culture, where the Jews are now living amongst the Greeks and living amongst the Romans, and that's the dominant culture, how do you apply the principles from the Torah in this overarching culture where it is very, very different? That is exactly the example that was given. So he's giving instruction as to how to function in this society where legally, under the force of law, the women have a certain status. And we need to figure out how to function in that when we don't elect the lawmakers. We live under the tyranny of the empire. There's a Senate, but those senators are not for us. Those senators are for the senatorial class. So we have no power over the law. So how do we function now? It's difficult. And therefore he gives certain instructions for how women to function in society, how men are to function in society, how slaves are to function in society. Whereas in the Torah, slaves are to be given their freedom if they wanted to. So that's a good example of understand that society, understand this society, and how to apply it. When those circumstances change, we change with it according to God's instructions. The instructions stay eternal, but they have to fit in the time in which We have to adapt into the time.
The application, and that's where wisdom comes in. Like the Torah gives you the foundation, the principles, but how you apply it in the given circumstance, in the time period you're living in, it requires wisdom,
I want to say insight.
insight.
To understand where we are, and then wisdom as to how to act.
Can I share?
Yes, please.
What I encountered with that, those who rejected Paul, eventually will reject Peter. Because, for example, Peter mentioned Paul.
Yeah.
And then eventually they'll reject Yeshua, and then all the apostolic
Yes.
writings.
Let's start
Yeah,
with
that's
Paul.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Because when you challenge the canon,
Yeah.
you
Yes.
reject the collective
Yeah.
wisdom.
Wisdom. Yeah.
Therefore, you become now the standard of deciding what is
Uh-huh.
Okay,
wisdom.
yeah.
True.
And then it doesn't stop with the New Testament.
Correct.
It will go eventually to the Torah because inevitably there is going to be something about me that I value more than God's command.
Yeah.
Especially when I like your watch. And I have no watch. I will find a reason to justify why that should be my watch. Inevitably I will be rejecting God's justice. And that's
Worship,
yeah,
well-being.
so thank you for that. I apologize. I talked too much. I didn't get into the other subject matter of messianic teachings that are widespread that are an unfortunate waste of time, but also dangerous. I was going to talk about the sacred name movement. I was going to talk about the endless calendars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about these kinds of things. But very simple. Forget about all the different calendars. It's all nonsense. And one of the main purposes of the calendar anyway is to gather together, unity, in God's appointed time. And that, of course, that's why they want the right time, because they don't want the wrong time. But it's God's appointed time. We meet on it together with each other and with Him. And therefore, He sets when it is. And the Jewish people have been keeping that measure ever since. All right? And so that in the first century, they are following the calendar. Now, there was also others. The Essenes rejected that calendar. So it's not a new problem. But they were the smart one, right? And Yeshua didn't correct the calendar. He didn't say, oh, you guys are all wrong. Now I'm going to teach you the correct one. Because that's what he came for, was to correct what was wrong. He doesn't correct the Sabbath. He doesn't correct the sabbatical.
Doesn't correct slavery.
Huh?
He didn't abolish slavery at all.
That is an interesting question. Statement, rather. It's an interesting statement. And that I don't want to be distracted by. And so if he doesn't correct the calendar then, and the Jewish people have been keeping the same measure every single counting of 7, 7, 7 till today, and lo and behold, the calendar is just fine as it is observed in Israel by the rabbinic Orthodox authorities throughout the Jewish world, and therefore no problem. No problem at all. Pesach is not yesterday, it's coming soon. Okay? And so gather together when all of Israel is gathering together, and not those special people who know everything, secret knowledge that everybody else is wrong and only I'm right. Okay? And by the way, the same about God's name. Right? I have the secret knowledge. I know how to pronounce and therefore control over the magic of God's name. And by the way, we find that highly offensive. We hate to hear people mentioning the name. This is very, very difficult for us, and we don't like it at all, because essentially it's disrespectful. I don't call my father Ariel. I don't call my mother Joab. I call him father, I call her mother. And so also when I come before the king, I don't call him Joe. I call him Almighty, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, titles. Okay? The name is meant to be instructive, is to character. That then rest on me, and I live in the name of, I live in the character of. Name is reputation. Alright? So don't be distracted by pronunciation. It shows that they don't know what they're talking about. It's not about pronunciation, it's about reputation. And reputation is an action. You know me by what I do. What do I do? That's, right? I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. That's what I did. Thus, I am the Lord Hashem, with the name, your God. What?
That's I am.
I am, or actually, I will be what I will be.
He wants to be worshipped for who he is.
Exactly.
Not the name, but your understanding of his character.
Yes, yes, exactly. Because that name will rest on us,
Yeah.
and we will live in his name. And you won't see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of. Not the pronunciation, correct pronunciation of, because by the way, I'm sure that people's accents are problematic.
Yeah.
All right? I'm sure that your accent is interfering with your pronunciation. Even if you knew how to pronounce it correctly, which we do not know. We don't know how to pronounce it incorrectly. That knowledge is lost to us. And even if we did, accent is a big deal.
For mute.
What?
For mute.
And in fact, mute also, yes, exactly. So,
How about the other mechanics believe that they cannot pronounce God, but if they write it, it's spelled G without O and D.
okay, so, yes, this is I don't like this myself. Okay, I write G-O-D. God is not his name. God is his
Yeah.
description. You are a God. That's not me. Okay, right? So, but religious Jews, because God is so great, so holy, even that we respect. Therefore, take the O out and put a dash. I don't like that. I don't do that. But I fellowship with people who do. It's not that. I choose my battles. All right. So I don't think it's necessary. But the idea is that of holiness. But since you bring up the spelling and such, the third thing that I was going to know, that I was going to talk about, is the wrong idea of Hebrew roots, of Hebrew thinking. That if the Hebrew text was originally a pictorial language, meaning pictures pictures communicate message, right? So Aleph was originally a bull's head, and then eventually they converted that literal into figurative. So now it's not a bull's head; it's an sound. It's a sound. It's an And you can combine that with other sounds that then can be read. And linguistically, once you change from a picture to a sound, the picture is lost. It's gone. No longer relevant. But wrong understanding of Hebraic roots thinks that no, the real meaning is in those pictures. So therefore, the meaning of a word is to find the picture meaning of those letters and read the picture meanings. It's a sentence. It's nonsense. Right? Don't be distracted by that either, because linguistically it's completely wrong, and actually it's endless. You can't communicate anymore. It's not the hidden meaning, right? And it's just wrong altogether. It's sounds. Sounds to form words. That is how we communicate the meaning of words, not the meaning of letters. And that might lead you into mystical interpretation of letters. So Jewish mysticism, like such as in this, the mystical meaning of letters. It's maybe very nice ideas, very nice messages, and as long as you say this is just an idea, this is just a sermon, an example of something beautiful. As long as you say that, you can say whatever you want. But once you say that this is the intended meaning, this is God's intended meaning, that's very good. Now you are taking on the authority to tell you say what God is saying. then you have to be very clear, very careful. So mystical, there's a lot of mystical in the Bible. Mystical is not wrong, but be very, very careful in mystical. All right, it's very tricky. And so that's one example is the mystical meaning of letters, not intended meaning. Because actually the letters in Hebrew that we use now is Aramaic. So it's the language of exile. The alphabet of exile. It's not the alphabet that the Torah was written in. The Torah that the alphabet was written in is Canaanite. And Canaanite got spread throughout the Mediterranean, became Greek, Greek became Latin, Latin became English. English alphabet comes from Canaanite. And that's the alphabet that the Torah was written. So it's completely different anyway. It's wrong altogether.
Is that the Proto-Canaanite Hebrew?
Yes, very good. That's Proto-Canaanite Hebrew. They changed the world. They took thousands of pictures into 22 or 24 letters.
Then with the symbols, if I'm not mistaken, the Palay Hebrew,
Sorry?
Palay Hebrew, with
The symbol, the picture.
Yeah, the picture.
Yeah. So, yes, it was symbols of it. The simplest form of communicating. I need 20 bulls.
With the Egyptians.
Like the Egyptians, right? Just take a picture of what you were saying. But the brilliance of what they did, and they were probably slaves. They had to communicate effectively. So, because otherwise, written language was only amongst the priestly elite. Those who had magic words that can be written and preserved. The rest of the people had no access to that. And so the lowest class, the slaves probably, they figure out the most simplest, logical way to communicate speech in written form in 22 letters. That's what succeeds. And that's what we have today. It's incredible. And that's what God used to write His word for us. So it's really not something amazing.
And the beauty about the Hebrew language is it evolves.
Well, every language does. No language stays the same. I mean, we're communicating in English. I was watching some film with my daughter before I came here. Maybe I shouldn't have been watching that with her, but never mind. It was in England, 1,000 years ago. And she asked, what language are they speaking? They're speaking English. Huh? You've changed so much.
Yeah.
We wouldn't understand the language 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. Changed so much. Old English.
Ayun, very old English. May mas old pa dyan.
And Hebrew is the same.
Here,
That's why as a modern Hebrew speaker, I don't rely on my modern language. When I am
thou
studying,
shalt not eat down.
I'll show you. When I'm studying, I have my English text or Greek or Arabic, and then I use a lexicon. So I can read this. The Kappa should take discipline, but even if I think I know it, I realize that I speak modern Hebrew. So I still follow, let's make sure that what I know is correct. And so I follow the Hebrew, Aramaic, lexicon of the Old Testament. So that the scholars, the linguists, who spend a whole life studying this, and generations studying this, they can tell me the meaning of this word. So I'm not relying on my modern knowledge. I'm relying on their knowledge to tell me what I might not know. Because same word, you use it today, maybe different meaning. Maybe it's a different meaning. Such as love, for example. I'll just give an example. Go around the room, define love, and we all give a different answer. So which one is God's answer? So I need to know what it is back then. So that's how I say it. Because language has changed.
Nainggit siya kasi naiwan siya.
I think they're making announcements for us. Thank you so much, you guys.
Latin.
Baruch Hashem indeed. I heard that says in
Alam niyo na, ha?